The bruises on her face had faded to a sickly yellow-green, but the ones on her soul were still fresh and bleeding when Roswell Quinn first saw her standing in the bitter February cold outside the general store in Miles City, Montana, in 1884. Georgia Grant stood like a statue carved from ice, her thin cotton dress doing nothing against the wind that howled down the main street, carrying with it the smell of wood smoke and horse manure. Her dark hair hung in tangled ropes around her shoulders, and her eyes stared at nothing, seeing everything and nothing all at once. She had been beautiful once, Roswell could tell, but something had broken inside her, something fundamental that made a person human. He had ridden into town that morning with a string of horses to sell, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air as he guided his animals down the rutted street. The geldings were good stock, well trained and healthy, and he expected to make a decent profit. But when he saw the woman standing there, shivering and still, something in his chest tightened. Roswell was 26 years old, tall and lean from years of hard work on the range, with dark brown hair that curled at his collar and eyes the color of summer sky. He had worked cattle and horses since he was 14, building a reputation as a fair man and a skilled horseman. He was not given to sentimentality or rash decisions, but something about the woman made him pull his horses to a stop. "Madam," he called out, his voice rough from disuse. He had been riding alone for 3 days. "Are you all right?" She did not answer, did not even turn her head to acknowledge he had spoken. Roswell dismounted and tied his lead horse to the hitching post. He approached her slowly, the way he would approach a spooked horse, hands visible and movements deliberate. "Madam, you are going to freeze out here. Do you have somewhere to go?" Up close, he could see the full extent of the damage. The bruises on her face were old, but there were newer ones on her arms, purple fingerprints where someone had gripped her too hard. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, and her feet were bare despite the snow that dusted the wooden boardwalk. "Please," he said softly, "let me help you." For the first time, her eyes focused on him. They were green, he noticed, the color of new grass in spring, but they were empty, hollowed out by whatever had happened to her. "I do not need help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do not need anything." "You need a coat at the very least," Roswell said, "and shoes. When did you last eat?" She blinked slowly, as if the question required great thought. "I do not remember." Roswell made a decision. He took off his heavy sheepskin coat and draped it over her shoulders. She flinched at the contact, and he stepped back quickly, giving her space. "My name is Roswell Quinn. I am a horse trader just passing through. I am not going to hurt you." "Everyone hurts everyone," she said flatly. "That is not true." He kept his voice gentle. "Will you tell me your name?" "Georgia." She pulled his coat tighter around herself, and he saw her hands were shaking. "Georgia Grant." "Well, Miss Grant, I would consider it a personal favor if you would let me buy you breakfast. There is a restaurant just down the street, and I have not had a decent meal in days." She studied him with those empty eyes, and for a moment he thought she would refuse. Then she nodded just once, and he felt an inexplicable rush of relief. The restaurant was warm and smelled of coffee and frying bacon. Roswell guided Georgia to a table in the back corner, far from the other patrons who turned to stare at them. He could see the questions in their eyes, the judgments forming, but he ignored them all. When the waitress came, a plump woman with kind eyes and gray hair, Roswell ordered enough food for 3 people. Eggs and bacon, pancakes with syrup, hash browns, biscuits with gravy, and 2 cups of coffee. Georgia sat motionless, staring at the scarred wooden table. She had not removed his coat, and it dwarfed her small frame. "How long have you been in Miles City?" Roswell asked when their coffee arrived. 6 months. Her voice was still that same flat whisper. "Maybe 7. Time does not mean much anymore." "Where are you from originally?" "Ohio, Cleveland." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, a ghost of the person she had been. My father owned a dry goods store. I used to help him with the books. I was good with numbers. What brought you out here? The flicker died. A man. He promised me a new life, a ranch, a home. He promised me everything. Roswell did not need to ask what had happened to those promises. He could see it written in the bruises, in the empty eyes, in the way she held herself as if expecting a blow. Their food arrived, steaming and plentiful. Georgia looked at it as if she had forgotten what food was for. Roswell picked up his fork and began to eat, hoping she would follow his example. After a long moment, she did. The first bite seemed to wake something in her, and she ate with sudden desperate hunger, as if her body had remembered its own needs. Roswell ate more slowly, watching her, making sure she did not make herself sick. When she finally set down her fork, there were tears on her cheeks. "I forgot," she whispered. "I forgot what it felt like to not be hungry." "When did you last have a real meal?" "I do not know. Days, maybe a week. He used to give me food, but only when I did what he wanted, and I stopped doing what he wanted." Roswell felt anger kindle in his chest, hot and sharp. "This man, where is he now?" "Dead!" She said it without emotion. "He got drunk and picked a fight with the wrong person 2 weeks ago. Someone shot him in the street. And you have been alone since then?" "Yes." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, seeking its warmth. "He kept me in a shack outside of town. After he died, I thought I could just leave, just walk away and be free. But I do not know how to be free anymore. I do not know how to be anything." Roswell leaned forward, his voice intense. "You can learn. You can remember who you were before him." "Can I?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the desperate hope buried beneath the emptiness. "I do not think that person exists anymore. He broke her. He broke her into so many pieces, I do not think they can be put back together." "They can," Roswell said with certainty. "It will take time, but they can." "Why do you care?" The question was not hostile, just genuinely confused. "You do not know me. I am nothing to you. You are a person who needs help. That is enough." Georgia shook her head slowly. "You do not understand what he did, what he made me do, what he made me become. I do not need to understand it to know that you deserve better than freezing to death in the street." She was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee. When she spoke again, her voice was so soft he had to lean in to hear her. "I do not know if I can be helped. Let me try." He did not know why it mattered so much, why this broken woman had reached inside his chest and grabbed hold of something essential. But she had, and he could not walk away from her. "I have a ranch about 30 miles from here. Nothing fancy, just a small spread with good water and grass. I need someone to help with the house, the cooking. You could stay there, earn your keep. Be safe while you figure out what comes next." "You do not know me," she repeated. "So tell me about yourself. Tell me who you were before you came here." Georgia took a shaky breath. "I was 20 years old when I met him. I am 22 now. I liked reading, especially poetry. I could recite entire passages of Whitman from memory. I helped my father with his store, and I was saving money to go to a teacher's college in Columbus. I wanted to teach children to read." "You can still do that," Roswell said. "No!" The word was final. "That girl is gone. He killed her piece by piece until there was nothing left but this." She gestured at herself, at the bruises and the haunted eyes. "This broken thing that jumps at shadows and cannot remember what it feels like to smile." "Then we will find her again," Roswell said firmly. "We will find the pieces and put them back together." "Why?" The question was almost angry now. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Roswell thought about the question, searching for the truth in his own heart. "Because everyone deserves a chance to heal. Because I have been alone on that ranch for 2 years, and maybe we can help each other. Because when I saw you standing in that street, I knew I could not just ride away. Georgia studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing her options, calculating risks. Finally, she nodded. All right, I will come to your ranch, but I cannot promise I will be any use to you. I cannot promise I will not just break even more. You will not, Roswell said with a confidence he did not entirely feel. I will make sure of it. They left the restaurant after Roswell paid for the meal and arranged to have supplies delivered to his ranch. He needed to sell his horses first, which took most of the afternoon. Georgia waited with the animals, speaking softly to them, and Roswell noticed they calmed under her touch. Whatever had been broken in her, she still had a way with horses. He sold the string for a good price to a rancher who needed work animals, then used some of the money to buy Georgia proper clothes, warm boots, and a heavy coat of her own. She protested at first, but he insisted, and eventually she accepted the gifts with quiet gratitude. They left Miles City as the sun was setting, riding double on Roswell's big bay gelding. Georgia sat behind him, holding loosely to his waist, and he could feel her shaking from more than just the cold. She was terrified, he realized. Terrified of trusting him, terrified of what might happen, terrified of hoping for something better. The ranch was a hard ride in the February cold, and it was full dark when they arrived. The house was small, just 3 rooms built of rough-hewn logs, but it was solid and warm. Roswell had built it himself with the help of a neighbor, and he took pride in it. He lit lamps and started a fire in the stone fireplace, while Georgia stood in the doorway, looking around with those empty eyes. The main room served as kitchen and living area, with a wood stove for cooking and a rough table with 2 chairs. 2 doors led to the sleeping rooms, one for him and one that had been empty until now. That room there is yours, Roswell said, pointing to the smaller bedroom. It has a bed and a trunk for your things. The door has a lock on the inside. Georgia looked at him sharply at that, and he saw understanding dawn in her eyes. He was giving her safety, control over her own space. Thank you, she whispered. I will not enter without your permission, he continued. This is your space, your sanctuary. You have my word. She nodded, and some of the tension left her shoulders. I do not know how to repay this kindness. You do not have to repay anything. Just heal. That is all I ask. That first night, Roswell made a simple dinner of beans and cornbread while Georgia sat at the table, watching him move around the kitchen. She was silent, but he could feel her eyes tracking his every movement, waiting for him to turn cruel, to demand payment for his kindness. He never did. They ate in companionable silence, and then Georgia retreated to her room. Roswell heard the lock click into place and felt satisfaction that she felt safe enough to sleep. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Roswell woke early to tend to his horses and the small herd of cattle he ran on his land. Georgia slept late, exhausted by years of fear and hunger. When she finally emerged, usually around mid-morning, she would make coffee and start on whatever household tasks seemed manageable. At first, she could barely function. Simple things overwhelmed her. The third day, Roswell came in from the barn to find her standing in front of the wood stove, staring at it blankly, tears running down her face. Georgia? He approached carefully. What is wrong? I cannot remember how to cook, she said, her voice breaking. I used to know how. I used to make bread and stews and pies, but I cannot remember. He would not let me cook. He said I was too stupid, that I would poison him. And now I have forgotten. Roswell gently took her elbow and guided her to a chair. Then I will teach you. I am not a great cook, but I can manage the basics. And so he did. That afternoon, they made bread together, Roswell talking her through each step. When the loaves came out of the oven, golden and fragrant, Georgia cried again, but this time with something that might have been joy. I made this, she whispered, holding a slice of warm bread. I made something good. You did, Roswell agreed. And you will make many more good things. Slowly, painfully slowly, Georgia began to emerge from her shell. She started cooking more, regaining skills she thought she had lost. She cleaned the house, not because Roswell demanded it, but because she wanted to, because creating order from chaos gave her a sense of control. She also began talking more. Little things at first, comments about the weather or the horses. But gradually she started sharing pieces of her past, the good parts from before everything went wrong. My mother died when I was 12, she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. She had a fever, and it took her in 3 days. After that, it was just me and my father. He taught me everything he knew about running a business. He used to say I had a head for numbers like no one he had ever met. You must miss him, Roswell said. Every day. Her voice was thick with grief. He died 2 years ago. Sudden, his heart gave out. That is when I met Thomas, the man who brought me here. I was alone and grieving, and he seemed so kind at first. He said he would take care of me, that I would never have to worry about anything again. When did he change? About a week after we arrived in Montana. She stared into the fire, her face hard. We were not even married, even though he had promised we would be. He just wanted someone to use, someone to control. And I was stupid enough to let him. You were not stupid, Roswell said firmly. You were grieving and alone, and he took advantage of that. That was his sin, not yours. I should have left sooner, should have fought harder. You survived. That took more strength than you know. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw something shift in her eyes. The emptiness was still there, but beneath it, something else was growing. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of trust. Why are you so kind to me? She asked. What do you get from this? Roswell thought about the question, about the truth he was still figuring out himself. I like having you here. I like hearing another voice in this house. I like watching you remember how to be human again, and I think maybe I was lonely for longer than I realized. Lonely, she repeated. Yes, I know what that feels like. As February turned to March, the weather began to warm, and Georgia grew stronger. She started venturing outside, first just to the porch, then to the barn, and eventually out into the pastures where Roswell worked his horses. She had a gift with animals, he discovered. The horses responded to her gentle touch, her quiet voice. Even the most skittish mare would calm when Georgia spoke to her. You should have been a horse trainer, Roswell said one afternoon, watching her work with a young gelding that had been giving him trouble. Maybe in another life, Georgia said, but she was smiling as she said it. It was the first genuine smile he had seen from her, and it transformed her face, bringing back hints of the beauty that had been buried under pain and fear. That night, they sat on the porch together, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. It was cold but not bitter, and they wrapped themselves in blankets, sitting close enough to share warmth but not touching. I think I am starting to remember, Georgia said quietly. Who I was, I mean. Not all of it, not yet, but pieces, little flashes of the person I used to be. That is good, Roswell said. That is real good, Georgia. I remembered something today, she continued. I remembered that I used to love dancing. My father would take me to barn dances in the summer, and I would dance until my feet hurt. I loved the music, the movement, the joy of it. Do you think you could love it again? Maybe. She turned to look at him, and in the dim light, her eyes were soft. I think maybe I could learn to love a lot of things again. Something passed between them in that moment, something unspoken but profound. Roswell felt it in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the blanket or the cooling night air. Georgia, he said slowly, I need to tell you something. What is it? I am glad you're here, not just because you needed help, but because I like who you are. I like talking to you, working beside you. I like the way you hum when you cook and the way you gentle the horses. I like you. She was quiet for a long time, and he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake, if he had pushed too hard, too fast. But then she reached out and took his hand, her fingers cold but steady. I like you too, she whispered. It scares me how much I like you, because I thought I would never trust anyone again, never want to be close to anyone again. But you make me want to try. Roswell squeezed her hand gently. We will go as slow as you need. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people learning to care about each other. Just two people, she repeated, and he heard the wonder in her voice. They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, watching the stars wheel overhead. It was not a grand romantic gesture, but it felt like the beginning of something real and true. The next weeks passed in a blur of springtime activity. The snow melted, revealing fresh grass, and Roswell turned his horses out to pasture. He and Georgia worked side by side, mending fences, repairing winter damage to the barn, planting a kitchen garden. Georgia thrived on the physical labor. Her body grew stronger, her face filled out as she ate regular meals, and the haunted look in her eyes gradually faded. She laughed sometimes now, a sound that made Roswell's heart skip, but there were still hard days, days when the memories overwhelmed her, when she locked herself in her room and would not come out, days when she flinched at sudden movements or went silent for hours at a time. Roswell learned to read her moods, to know when she needed space and when she needed company. He never pushed, never demanded, just offered his steady presence and let her decide what she needed. One evening in late March, Georgia emerged from one of her dark days and found Roswell in the barn, grooming his bay gelding. She stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching him work, and then she spoke. I want to tell you about it, about what he did to me. Roswell set down his brush and turned to face her. You do not have to. I know, but I want to. I need to, I think. I need someone to know, to understand why I am the way I am. All right, Roswell said gently. I am listening. Georgia leaned against a support post, her arms wrapped around herself. He started with words, telling me I was stupid, worthless, that no one else would ever want me. I believed him because I was alone and scared, and he was all I had. Then came the rules, what I could wear, where I could go, what I could say. He controlled everything. She paused, and Roswell waited patiently. Then came the hitting. First just slaps when I broke his rules. Then worse. Fists, a belt, whatever was handy. I tried to fight back once, and he broke my arm. I tried to run, and he found me and dragged me back. I learned to be still, to be silent, to disappear inside myself. It was the only way to survive. Georgia, Roswell said, his voice rough with emotion. I am so sorry. The worst part, she continued, and now tears were running down her face. The worst part was not the pain. It was losing myself. I stopped being Georgia Grant, the girl who loved poetry and numbers and dancing. I became this empty thing that just existed, waiting for the next blow, the next cruelty. And even after he died, even after I was free, I could not find my way back. I did not know how. Roswell crossed the space between them and, moving slowly so she could stop him if she wanted, pulled her into his arms. She stiffened at first, then collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest. You are finding your way back, he murmured into her hair. Every day you are finding another piece of yourself. You are the strongest person I have ever known, Georgia. I do not feel strong. Strength is not about never breaking. It is about putting yourself back together after you have been shattered. And you are doing that. You are doing that every single day. She cried for a long time, and he just held her, offering comfort without words. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. Thank you, she said, for listening, for not judging, for not treating me like I am damaged goods. You are not damaged, Roswell said fiercely. You are healing. There is a difference. She looked up at him, and he saw something new in her eyes, something warm and alive and hopeful. Roswell Quinn, I think I might be falling in love with you. His heart stuttered in his chest. Georgia Grant, I know I am falling in love with you. She smiled then, a real smile that reached her eyes, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. That is terrifying. It is, he agreed, but it is also wonderful. Kiss me, she whispered. Please. I want to know what it feels like to be kissed by someone who cares about me. Roswell cupped her face gently in his hands and lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was soft and sweet, nothing demanding or urgent, just a tender meeting of mouths that spoke of caring and respect and the beginning of love. When they pulled apart, Georgia was crying again, but these were different tears. That was my first real kiss, she said. Thomas never kissed me like that, like I mattered. You matter more than anything, Roswell said, and I will spend every day proving that to you if you will let me. I will let you, she said, and kissed him again. April brought warm winds and the first wildflowers, scattered across the prairie like jewels. Georgia picked bouquets and put them in jars around the house, adding brightness to every room. She sang while she cooked, old songs her mother had taught her, and the sound filled the house with life. Roswell found himself looking for excuses to be near her, to hear her voice, to see her smile. He had been with women before, brief encounters in towns during his wandering years, but he had never felt anything like this. This was not just desire, though he certainly desired her. It was deeper, more fundamental. It was the feeling of finding the piece of yourself you had not known was missing. They spent their evenings together now, sitting by the fire or on the porch, talking about everything and nothing. Georgia told him about her childhood in Cleveland, the adventures she and her father had shared. Roswell told her about growing up on a ranch in Wyoming, learning to ride before he could walk, losing his parents to influenza when he was 16. We are both orphans, Georgia observed one night. Both alone in the world. Not alone anymore, Roswell said, taking her hand. We have each other now. Yes, she agreed softly. We do. In early May, a neighbor rode over to invite them to a barn dance being held at his ranch the following Saturday. Georgia's eyes lit up when she heard about it, then immediately dimmed. I do not have anything to wear to a dance, she said after the neighbor had left. Then we will go to Miles City and get you a dress, Roswell said. I have been meaning to go for supplies anyway. Roswell, you have already spent so much money on me, and I will spend more if it makes you happy. He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. Let me spoil you a little, Georgia. Let me give you the things you deserve. They made the trip to Miles City the next day, and Roswell waited patiently while Georgia tried on dresses in the dry goods store. She finally chose a simple blue cotton dress that matched her eyes, with small white flowers printed on the fabric. It was not fancy, but when she emerged from the dressing room wearing it, Roswell's breath caught. You are beautiful, he said. She blushed, a pretty pink coloring her cheeks. I feel almost like myself again, like the person I used to be. You are better than the person you used to be, Roswell said. You are stronger now. You have survived things that would have broken most people. They bought the dress along with new shoes and a ribbon for her hair, and Georgia was glowing with excitement on the ride home. I cannot remember the last time I danced, she said. It feels like a lifetime ago. Then we will dance until your feet hurt, just like you used to, Roswell promised. The night of the barn dance, Roswell put on his best clothes, a clean white shirt and dark trousers, and brushed his hat until it shone. When Georgia emerged from her room wearing the blue dress, her hair pinned up with the white ribbon, he felt his heart swell with love. You are going to be the prettiest woman there, he said. Stop, she said, but she was smiling. You are going to make me blush. Good. I like it when you blush. The dance was held at the Morrison Ranch, a large spread about 10 miles from Roswell's land. Dozens of people had gathered, ranchers and their families, cowboys and townspeople. A trio of musicians played fiddle, banjo, and guitar, filling the barn with lively music. Roswell felt Georgia tense as they entered, and he understood why. This was her first time being around people since he had found her in Miles City. She was nervous about how they would react to her, what they might say or think. But the Morrison family welcomed them warmly, and soon Georgia was laughing and talking with the other women, sharing recipes and stories. Roswell watched her bloom under their friendly attention, watched her remember how to be social, how to connect with others. When the music started, he led her out onto the makeshift dance floor and pulled her into his arms. They started with a simple waltz, and he felt her relax as they moved together. "I remember," she said, her eyes shining. "I remember this feeling, this joy. Hold on to it," Roswell said. "Hold on to every good feeling, every happy moment. Build them up until they outnumber the bad ones." They danced for hours, sometimes together, sometimes with other partners, as was customary. Roswell saw several men admire Georgia, saw the way she handled their attention with grace and confidence. She was coming back to life, becoming fully herself again, and it was beautiful to witness. Late in the evening, during a slow waltz, Georgia laid her head on Roswell's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, "for bringing me here, for giving me back this piece of myself." "You are giving yourself back," Roswell said. "I am just helping you remember where to look. I love you, Roswell Quinn. I know it is fast. I know we have not known each other long, but I love you. I love your kindness and your patience and the way you see me as a whole person, not just a broken thing to be fixed." "I love you too, Georgia Grant," Roswell said, his voice thick with emotion. "I have loved you since the moment I saw you standing in that street, refusing to give up even when everything seemed hopeless." She lifted her head and kissed him, right there in the middle of the dance floor with everyone watching. He did not care, and neither did she. They had found each other in the wreckage of their separate loneliness, and they were building something new and beautiful together. The ride home was quiet, both of them wrapped in the warm glow of the evening. When they reached the ranch, Roswell helped Georgia down from the wagon and walked her to the door. "Stay with me tonight," she said suddenly. "Not to do anything, just to sleep beside me. I do not want to be alone tonight." "Are you sure?" Roswell asked. "I do not want to push you into anything you are not ready for." "I am sure." She took his hand and led him inside, through the main room and into her bedroom. It was the first time he had been past her doorway, and he looked around with interest. She had made the space her own, with wildflowers on the windowsill and a quilt she had been piecing together spread across the bed. They lay down together, fully clothed, and Georgia curled into his side with her head on his chest. Roswell wrapped his arms around her, holding her close but not confining, and she sighed contentedly. "This is perfect," she murmured. "This is exactly what I needed." "Sleep, sweetheart," Roswell said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I will be right here when you wake up." She fell asleep quickly, her breathing evening out, her body relaxing completely for the first time since he had known her. Roswell lay awake for a while longer, marveling at the trust she had placed in him, at the love that had grown between them against all odds. He had ridden into Miles City alone, focused only on selling his horses and moving on. He had left with Georgia, and his entire world had changed. She had needed rescuing, yes, but she had also rescued him from his loneliness, from the empty years of existing without really living. Together, they were becoming more than either of them could have been alone. Together, they were healing. May slipped into June, and the prairie exploded with life. The grass grew thick and green. The wildflowers bloomed in brilliant colors, and the horses grew fat and sleek on the abundant feed. Roswell and Georgia worked together every day, building their partnership in labor and in love. Georgia had taken over all the household duties now, Not because Roswell expected it, but because she wanted to create a home. She sewed curtains for the windows, braided rugs for the floors, and turned the simple ranch house into something warm and welcoming. She also started working more with the horses, and Roswell discovered she had a real talent for training. She could gentle even the wildest Mustang, using patience and consistency instead of force. Together, they made a good team, Roswell breaking the horses to saddle while Georgia refined their training, teaching them to respond to subtle cues. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Roswell took a deep breath and asked the question that had been burning in his heart for weeks. Georgia, will you marry me? She turned to look at him, her eyes wide with surprise. What? Marry me, he repeated, taking her hands in his. I know we have not been together long, but I know what I feel. I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building this ranch, raising horses, maybe raising children someday. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to be your husband, your partner, your best friend. Will you marry me? Tears spilled down Georgia's cheeks, but she was smiling. Yes, she said. Yes, Roswell, I will marry you. I will marry you and spend my whole life loving you and being grateful that you saw me when I could not see myself. Roswell pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and hope and joy into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing, he realized they were both crying. We need a ring, he said. I should have gotten a ring first. I do not need a ring, Georgia said. I just need you. You are getting a ring anyway, Roswell said firmly. And a proper wedding, with your friends and mine as witnesses. You deserve that, Georgia. You deserve everything good and beautiful. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Miles City, with half the county in attendance. Georgia wore a new dress, white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, and carried a bouquet of wildflowers Roswell had picked that morning. She was radiant, glowing with happiness, and Roswell could barely speak his vows for the emotion clogging his throat. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Roswell kissed her tenderly, and the congregation erupted in applause. They were married, bound together by law and love, and Roswell had never been happier. The wedding reception was held at the Morrison Ranch again, with food and music and dancing late into the night. Georgia danced with everyone, her laughter ringing out across the barn, and Roswell watched her with pride and love. This was the woman he had married, vibrant and alive and whole. Not the broken creature he had found in the street, but not the innocent girl she had been before either. She was something new, forged in fire and pain and love, stronger than she had ever been. As they rode home in the wagon, the moon bright overhead, Georgia leaned against Roswell's shoulder. I am so happy, she said simply. I did not think I would ever feel this way again, but I am so completely happy. So am I, Roswell said, so am I. My wife, my husband, she said, testing out the word. Roswell Quinn, my husband. I like the sound of that. Georgia Quinn, he replied. I like the sound of that even better. That night, they consummated their marriage gently and with great tenderness. Roswell was patient, letting Georgia set the pace, making sure she felt safe and loved every moment. When they finally came together, it was with joy and laughter and tears, a celebration of everything they had overcome to reach this moment. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight, streaming through the window, and Georgia traced patterns on Roswell's chest with her fingertips. I never thought I could feel this way with a man, she said quietly. After Thomas, I thought I would always be afraid, always tense and waiting for pain. But with you, I feel safe. I feel cherished. You have given me back something I thought was lost forever. You have given me everything, Roswell said, kissing her forehead. Purpose, love, a reason to build a real home instead of just a place to sleep. You are my home, Georgia. And you are mine, she whispered. The summer passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. They worked the ranch together, Roswell and Georgia, equal partners in every way. The horse herd grew as Roswell bought young stock to train and sell, and Georgia proved invaluable in their education. She also proved to be an excellent ranch wife in other ways. She kept detailed books of their expenses and income, her talent with numbers helping them make smart business decisions. She negotiated prices in town with skill, often getting better deals than Roswell could have managed. She was strong and capable and smart, and Roswell fell more in love with her every day. In August, Georgia began feeling ill in the mornings, and after a few weeks of this, she rode into Miles City to see the doctor. When she returned, she was glowing. I am pregnant, she announced as soon as Roswell came in from the barn. We are going to have a baby. Roswell let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. A baby, he kept repeating. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Georgia asked, suddenly uncertain. It is sooner than we planned. Happy does not even begin to cover it, Roswell said, kissing her soundly. I am thrilled. I am overjoyed. I am the luckiest man alive. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and into winter. Georgia bloomed with it, her body growing round with their child, her face radiant with health and happiness. Roswell fussed over her constantly, making sure she did not work too hard, that she ate enough, that she rested when she needed to. I am pregnant, not fragile, Georgia would protest, but she smiled when she said it, touched by his concern. You are carrying our child, Roswell would reply, the most precious cargo in the world. Let me take care of you. On a cold February night, exactly 1 year after Roswell had found Georgia standing in the street in Miles City, she went into labor. The midwife, Mrs. Henderson from a neighboring ranch, arrived quickly and took charge, shooing Roswell out of the bedroom. He paced the main room for hours, listening to Georgia's cries of pain and feeling helpless. But finally, just after midnight, he heard a new sound, the thin wail of a newborn baby. Mrs. Henderson emerged from the bedroom, smiling. Congratulations, Mr. Quinn. You have a healthy baby boy. Roswell rushed into the bedroom and found Georgia propped up against pillows, exhausted but beaming, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. He approached slowly, awed by the sight of his wife and newborn son. Meet your son, Georgia said softly, pulling back the blanket to reveal a red, wrinkled face topped with dark hair. What should we name him? Roswell looked down at the baby, his baby, and felt love unlike anything he had ever experienced. Robert, he said, after my father, Robert Grant Quinn. Robert, Georgia repeated, smiling through her tears. It is perfect. Baby Robert was a healthy, hungry child who kept them both busy through the remaining winter months. Roswell took over most of the ranch work, letting Georgia focus on their son, but she still insisted on helping when she could, carrying Robert in a sling while she did lighter chores. As spring returned and Robert grew stronger, they fell into a new rhythm. Georgia would work in the garden or the house while Robert napped, and Roswell would bring the baby out to the barn sometimes, so Georgia could work with the horses she loved. He is going to be a horseman, Georgia predicted one afternoon, watching 3-month-old Robert stare fascinated at one of the mares. Look how he watches them. Of course he will be, Roswell said, wrapping his arms around his wife from behind. He has the best teachers in Montana. Life was good, better than Roswell had ever imagined it could be. He had a wife he adored, a healthy son, and a thriving ranch. But more than that, he had the satisfaction of knowing he had helped save someone who needed saving, and in the process, saved himself. Georgia had blossomed into the woman she was always meant to be, strong and confident and full of life. The scared, broken creature he had found in Miles City was gone, replaced by someone whole and happy and deeply loved. One evening in late spring, as they sat on the porch watching Robert play, With a set of blocks Roswell had carved for him, Georgia turned to her husband with tears in her eyes. "What is it?" Roswell asked, concerned. "Are you all right?" "I am more than all right," Georgia said. "I was just thinking about where I was a year and a half ago, standing in that street, frozen and empty, waiting to die, and now look at me. I have a husband who loves me, a beautiful son, a home. I have my life back, Roswell. You gave me my life back." "You gave yourself your life back," Roswell corrected gently. "You did the hard work of healing. You made the choice to try again, to trust again, to love again. I just gave you a safe place to do it." "You gave me everything," Georgia insisted. "And I want you to know that I see it, I appreciate it, and I love you more than words can express." "I love you too," Roswell said, pulling her close. "More than I knew it was possible to love someone." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son play, the sun setting over the prairie they called home. In the distance, the horses grazed peacefully, and a meadowlark sang its evening song. 2 years later, Georgia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Grace. She had her mother's green eyes and her father's dark hair, and she was the light of their lives. Robert, now a sturdy 3-year-old, was enchanted with his baby sister and spent hours entertaining her with silly faces and songs. The ranch continued to thrive. Roswell's reputation as a horse trainer spread, and people came from all over Montana to buy his animals. Georgia managed the business side, keeping their books in perfect order and negotiating sales with skill that impressed even the hardest bargainers. They were happy, truly happy, in a way that neither of them had ever expected to be. They had weathered their individual storms and found each other in the aftermath, building something beautiful and lasting from the ruins of their separate pasts. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Roswell took Georgia back to Miles City, to the spot where he had first seen her. They stood there together, holding hands, remembering. "I was dying here," Georgia said softly. "Not physically, not yet, but inside I was already dead." "And now?" Roswell asked. "Now I am so alive it sometimes takes my breath away," Georgia said, turning to face him. "You saw me when I could not see myself. You believed in me when I had stopped believing. You loved me when I did not think I deserved love. You helped me remember who I was, and you helped me become someone even better." "We helped each other," Roswell said. "I was alone too, Georgia. I had a ranch and horses and work, but I did not have a life. You gave me that. You gave me a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. You gave me love." "We saved each other," Georgia said, and it was true. They kissed there in the street, in the very spot where their story had begun, and then they walked away hand in hand, back to the wagon where their children waited, back to the ranch that was their home, back to the life they had built together. Years passed, good years full of love and laughter and the normal trials of ranch life. Robert grew into a tall, serious boy who loved horses as much as his parents did. Grace became a bright, adventurous girl who could ride before she could read. In 1892, Georgia gave birth to another son, William, and 2 years after that, another daughter, Rose. The ranch house expanded to accommodate their growing family, with additions built onto the original structure. The herd grew too, and Roswell hired a few cowboys to help with the work. But the core of the operation remained Roswell and Georgia, partners in every sense of the word. Georgia never forgot where she had come from. The darkness she had survived, but she did not let it define her either. She used her experience to help other women, quietly offering support and assistance to those she met who bore the signs of abuse. She became known in the county as someone who could be trusted, someone who would help without judgment. One day in the summer of 1896, a young woman appeared at their ranch, bruised and frightened, asking for help. Georgia took her in without question, giving her the same sanctuary Roswell had given Georgia all those years ago. The woman stayed for 3 months, healing and finding her strength, and then moved on to start a new life in California. You are doing what I did, Roswell said that night as they lay in bed. Saving people. I am paying forward what you gave me, Georgia said. One person at a time, I am trying to make a difference. You already make a difference, Roswell said. Every single day. As their children grew and the new century approached, Roswell and Georgia grew older but no less devoted to each other. They faced the challenges of ranch life together, droughts and hard winters, market fluctuations, and the occasional difficult neighbor. But they always faced them together, united in their love and their commitment to each other. Robert, at 18, was running much of the day-to-day ranch operations, showing a natural talent for both horses and business. Grace, at 16, was courting a young cowboy from a neighboring ranch, much to her father's consternation and her mother's amusement. William and Rose were still children, but already showing signs of the strength and character their parents had instilled in them. On a warm evening in June 1899, Roswell and Georgia sat on their porch, now expanded and comfortable, watching the sunset over land they had worked together for 15 years. They were 41 and 37, respectively, still young but marked by the years of hard work and good living. Do you ever regret it? Roswell asked suddenly. Taking a chance on me that day in Miles City? Georgia looked at him in surprise. Regret it? Roswell Quinn, marrying you was the best decision I ever made. You gave me back my life, and then you gave me a life beyond anything I could have imagined. We have built something beautiful here, something lasting. We have 4 amazing children, a successful ranch, and love that has only grown stronger with time. Why would I regret any of that? I just wanted to make sure you were happy, Roswell said, that this life, this simple ranch life, was enough for you. It is more than enough, Georgia said firmly. It is everything. You are everything. You saved me just as much as I saved you, Roswell said, taking her hand. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You taught me what it meant to really live, to love with my whole heart, to build something meaningful. I was drowning in loneliness, and you were my lifeboat. Then we saved each other, Georgia said, echoing words from years before. And we built this life together, from the broken pieces of who we were into something whole and good. They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching their youngest children play in the yard while their oldest worked in the barn. It was a simple scene, domestic and peaceful, but it represented everything they had fought for, everything they had built. Georgia had been nearly destroyed when Roswell found her, her spirit battered and her sense of self erased. But she had not been broken. Not quite. There had been enough left, enough strength and courage buried deep, to choose to try again, to trust again, to love again. And Roswell, with his patience and kindness and unwavering belief in her, had helped her find those buried pieces. He had given her time and space and safety to heal. He had seen the woman she could be, not just the victim she had been, and he had loved both with equal devotion. Together, they had created something neither could have achieved alone: a family, a home, a legacy of love and strength that would continue long after they were gone. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Robert came out of the barn and called that supper was ready. The family gathered around the big table Georgia had insisted they build when William was born, too many of them now for the old small one. They bowed their heads while Roswell said grace, thanking God for the food, for the family, for the blessings they had received. And then they ate together, talking and laughing, sharing the events of their days, completely comfortable in each other's company. This was what it was all about, Georgia thought as she looked around the table at her husband and children. This love, this family, this life they had built together. She had been lost, but Roswell had helped her find her way home. Not to the person she had been before, but to someone new and stronger. She had survived the unthinkable and come out the other side not just intact but thriving. She had learned that she was stronger than she knew, braver than she believed, more capable than she had imagined. And she had learned that love, real love, was not about control or possession or pain. It was about respect and partnership and choosing each other every single day. After supper, after the children had gone to bed or to their own pursuits, Roswell and Georgia returned to the porch, to their favorite spot where they had shared so many conversations over the years. I have been thinking, Roswell said, about expanding the ranch, buying that section of land to the north that old Peterson is selling. With Robert ready to take over more responsibility, we could handle the extra work. That is a good idea, Georgia said. We should also think about getting more breeding stock, improving our herd. I have been studying some of the new bloodlines coming out of Kentucky. They talked business for a while, equal partners discussing plans and strategies. Then the conversation drifted to their children, to Robert's growing maturity and Grace's upcoming wedding, to William's progress in school and Rose's latest adventure. We have done well, Roswell said eventually. Raised good kids, built a good life. We have, Georgia agreed. Because we did it together. As the night deepened and the temperature dropped, they finally went inside, banking the fire and checking that the doors were locked. In their bedroom, the room they had shared for 15 years, they undressed and climbed into bed, curling together in the familiar comfort of long marriage. I love you, Georgia Quinn, Roswell murmured into her hair. I have loved you since the moment I saw you, and I will love you until the day I die. I love you too, Roswell Quinn, Georgia whispered back. You helped me remember who I was, and then you helped me become who I was meant to be. I will love you forever. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in their love and their life together. Outside, the Montana wind whispered across the prairie, carrying with it the smell of grass and horses and home. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. Robert married a sensible young woman named Sarah and built a house on the far corner of the ranch, staying close to help run the growing operation. Grace married her cowboy and moved to his family's ranch 20 miles away, but visited often with her growing family. William went away to college in 1905, the first Quinn to do so, studying agriculture and animal husbandry. He returned with new ideas and techniques that helped modernize the ranch. Rose became a teacher, fulfilling a dream her mother had once had, educating children in the small schoolhouse in Miles City. Through it all, Roswell and Georgia remained the heart of the family and the ranch. They grew older gracefully, their hair graying and their faces weathering, but their love never diminishing. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by years of shared experience and mutual respect. They became grandparents, then great-grandparents, watching their legacy spread across Montana and beyond. The ranch they had built together thrived and grew, becoming one of the most respected horse operations in the territory. But more than the material success, more than the land or the horses or the money, their real legacy was the love they had shared and the example they had set. They showed their children and grandchildren what real partnership looked like, what love based on respect and equality looked like, what it meant to overcome adversity and build something beautiful from the ruins. Georgia never forgot the broken woman she had been, but she did not let that woman define her. She used her experience to help others, to advocate for women in difficult situations, to create change in her community. She was known throughout the county as a woman of strength and compassion, someone who understood suffering but refused to be defeated by it. Roswell never stopped seeing his wife as the miracle she was, the gift he had been given that cold February morning in 1884. He supported her in all her endeavors, proud of her strength and her compassion, grateful every day that he had been in the right place at the right time to help her when she needed it most. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1914, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was full of noise and laughter, 3 generations of Quinns sharing food and stories and love. That evening, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Roswell and Georgia sat on their porch one more time, looking out over the land they had worked together for 3 decades. 30 years, Georgia said wonderingly. Can you believe it has been 30 years? Best 30 years of my life, Roswell said. and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. So would I, Georgia said. She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture so familiar it was second nature. You know what I think about sometimes? About that day you found me, about how close I came to just giving up, to letting the cold take me. If you had ridden past 10 minutes later, I might have been gone. But I did not ride past 10 minutes later, Roswell said firmly. I was there exactly when I was supposed to be, and you were strong enough to accept help when it was offered. That was not chance, Georgia. That was fate, or providence, or whatever you want to call it. We were meant to find each other. I believe that, Georgia said softly. I believe we were meant to save each other, to build this life together. Everything I went through, all the pain and fear, it led me to you. And I would go through it all again if it meant ending up here, with you, with our family, with this life we have created. You should not have had to go through it at all, Roswell said. Well, anger at long-dead Thomas still burning in his heart. You deserved better. But I got better, Georgia pointed out. I got you. I got this life. The pain made me strong enough to appreciate what I have, made me capable of helping others who are suffering. In a strange way, it made me who I am, and I like who I am now. I love who you are, Roswell said. I have always loved who you are, from that first moment to this one, and every moment in between. They sat in silence for a while, comfortable in each other's presence, no words needed. They had said everything that needed saying over the years, declared their love in 1,000 different ways. Now they simply existed together, two people who had become one through years of partnership and devotion. The next decade passed quickly, as years do when you are happy and busy. The ranch continued to thrive under Robert and William's management, with Roswell and Georgia gradually stepping back to enjoy their later years. They traveled some, visiting Grace in her home and exploring parts of Montana they had never seen. But they always returned to their ranch, to the house where they had raised their children and built their life. It was home in the deepest sense of the word, the place where they belonged, the place where their story had unfolded. In the spring of 1926, Roswell fell ill with pneumonia. He was 68 years old, still strong but not invincible, and the illness hit him hard. Georgia nursed him tirelessly, sitting by his bedside day and night, refusing to leave him. You cannot leave me, she told him fiercely one night when his fever was at its worst. We are not done yet, Roswell Quinn. We have more years ahead of us, more time together. You cannot leave me. Not planning to, Roswell rasped, his voice hoarse. Made it this long with you by my side. Not giving up now. And he did not give up. Slowly, gradually, he fought his way back to health, driven by his love for Georgia and his determination to spend more years with her. By summer, he was back on his feet, thinner and a bit frailer, but very much alive. You scared me, Georgia said one evening as they resumed their ritual of sitting on the porch together. Scared myself, Roswell admitted. But I could not leave you, Georgia. Not yet. We still have time left, and I intend to make the most of every minute. I am holding you to that, Georgia said, leaning her head on his shoulder. They had 5 more good years together, years of quiet contentment and deep love. They watched their grandchildren marry and have children of their own. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary, surrounded by 4 generations of family. They continued to work together on the ranch, though at a slower pace, still partners in everything. In the winter of 1931, on a cold February night, very much like the one when they had first met 47 years earlier, Georgia passed away peacefully in her sleep, Roswell holding her hand. She was 70 years old, and she had lived a full, rich life, one that bore no resemblance to the broken existence she had been trapped in when Roswell found her. Roswell was devastated by her loss, but he took comfort in knowing that they had had decades together, that they had built something beautiful and lasting, that their love story had been one for the ages. He lived another 3 years, cared for by his children and grandchildren, still actively involved in the ranch, but clearly diminished by George's absence. He spoke of her often, keeping her memory alive, telling stories of their life together to anyone who would listen. On a warm June evening in 1934, Roswell passed away peacefully in his sleep, in the bed he had shared with Georgia for so many years. He was 76 years old, and he had lived a good life, a life defined by love and partnership, and the simple joy of working land he loved with a woman he adored. They were buried side by side in the cemetery in Miles City, their graves marked by simple stones that bore their names and the dates of their lives. But their real legacy was not in those stones. It was in the thriving ranch that continued to operate under their descendants' stewardship. It was in the dozens of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who carried their blood and their values forward. It was in the stories that were told and retold about the cowboy who had saved a broken woman and the woman who had saved him right back. Georgia's spirit had been nearly broken when Roswell found her that cold February morning in 1884. She had been standing in the street, frozen and empty, waiting for death. But Roswell had seen something in her, some spark that refused to be extinguished, and he had offered her a chance to heal. He had helped her remember who she was, reminded her that she was strong and capable and worthy of love. He had given her time and space and safety to put herself back together, and he had loved her through every step of the process. But Georgia had done the real work. She had made the choice to try again, to trust again, to love again. She had fought her way back from the edge of oblivion and had emerged stronger and more complete than she had been before. Together, they had built something extraordinary, a love story that transcended pain and fear, a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection, a life that touched hundreds of people and changed them for the better. They had proven that it is possible to survive the unsurvivable, to heal from the unhealable, to build beauty from ashes. They had shown that love, real love, is not about control or possession. It is about seeing someone for who they truly are and loving them anyway. It is about standing beside someone through their darkest days and celebrating with them in the light. Their story lived on long after they were gone, passed down through generations as an example of what love should be, what partnership could achieve, what two people could build when they chose each other every single day. The ranch still operated in the 21st century, still owned by Quinn descendants, still raising quality horses. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun was setting over the prairie, people swore they could feel a presence, a warmth, as if Roswell and Georgia were still there, still sitting on their porch, still holding hands, still loving each other across the barriers of time and death. Their love had been tested by fire and had emerged unbreakable. Their life together had been hard-won but precious beyond measure, and their legacy lived on, not just in the land and the horses and the family, but in the simple truth they had proven, that it is never too late to start over, that love can heal even the deepest wounds, and that two broken people can create something whole and beautiful together. Georgia's spirit had been nearly broken when Roswell found her, but he had helped her remember who she was, and together they had created a life beyond anything either of them had dreamed possible. They had loved deeply and completely, and that love had transformed them both, making them better, stronger, more whole. In the end, that was their real legacy, the proof that love conquers all, that healing is possible, and that two people who choose each other can weather any storm and build something that lasts forever.